This episode of Dispatches from Planet Albany is brought to you with support by New York State United Teachers, which represents more than 600,000 educators and school-related professionals in New York. Dispatches is also supported by the public affairs firm O'Donnell and Associates. For more information, check out o'donnellsolutions.com.
I've also declared war on potholes, so here's the first shot across the bow.
Well, as you know, with Planet Albany, there's always something that makes the planet turn.
And it's this amazing view of D.C., and Eddie Vedder comes out. And he goes, "You have a cigarette?" And I've never smoked in my life, but if I had, I wish that was the moment.
And this strategy takes us from potholes to knotholes.
I would like to say it was a pleasure, Mr. Kim. But I'm on the road.
I'm David Lombardo, and this is Dispatches from Planet Albany, a podcast about power and politics in state government. On this episode, we're turning our attention to live event ticketing regulations, which was thrust into the media spotlight this summer by social media sensation and New York City mayoral frontrunner Zohran Mamdani after he called on FIFA to embrace some more consumer-friendly provisions for ticket sales in order to see the World Cup when it comes to America, including sites here in New York. And while it remains to be seen whether the Assembly members' petition has any effect in the short run, the opportunity to provide more lasting and expansive ticketing regulations will come in Albany next year when state lawmakers need to update this section of law or risk letting the status quo expire. To discuss the push that will come next year and the impact, if any, from the media attention brought to the issue by Zohran Mamdani, we're joined by State Senator James Skoufis, a Hudson Valley Democrat who has been the leader on this issue for more than 6 years in Albany. Thanks so much for making the time, Senator.
Anytime for you, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Shucks. So you have publicly expressed gratitude to your legislative colleague for using his platform to highlight live event ticketing regulations, with his September video on this issue getting 6.7 million views just on Twitter. Despite that positivity, was there part of you, maybe just a little bit of you, that was like, "Hey, Zohran, I really could have used this video back in May and June when I was pushing this issue and could have used every single possible tool, weapon to fight this battle against a lot of stakeholders who do not want any changes"?
Sure, although I don't know that it would have gotten the same number of millions of views back in May or June as it just got the other week. But more importantly, we welcome this type of social media and effort and spotlighting in February, March, April, and May, and potentially June of next year, more importantly. And so, look, this, as you teed up, this issue is coming back next session. There will not be another sort of punting, a straight extender, as we call it, of the existing law.
Why not? You feel very confident.
It was made extremely abundantly clear that we're doing this one-year punt. And I remind you, we've seen this movie before. The last time, prior to last year, that we took up this bill, it was coming off of a one-year punt as well. The excuse back then was, well, we're coming out of COVID, give it another year for us to see what the repercussions of live entertainment in New York and the existing law and the changes. And so we went through this, and then we made the changes to all-in pricing and a bunch of other things last time around. There's not going to be another punting. There's a full expectation by everybody that we are doing the thing. We just need to figure out what the thing is exactly next session.
Anyone who's been to a concert, a sporting event, has some gripe about the ticket purchasing experience. And if you poll on some of the consumer-friendly provisions that you're pushing, I have to imagine the majority of them get overwhelming support. So how do you mobilize people about an issue that they would support but probably are not beating down the walls of the legislature to act on?
Well, certainly, I think Zohran has demonstrated a very clear skill set and ability to do exactly what you're describing on a variety of issues. And if he's successful in November, and I suspect he very, very likely will be the winner in November, his team and I'm certainly going to be reaching out to next year to see if they're willing to lean in hard on behalf of their constituents and my constituents and all of New York State, our fans throughout New York. Because look, he has a platform that the large majority of us in New York don't, maybe save one person, AOC. And, we want to make sure that if he's willing, that he's leaning into this issue at the right moment. But certainly, he's not the only one. We had a very short runway. And now, look, in some ways it was advantageous. We thought. It turned out that, it wasn't. But in other ways, we were very mindful that it was not advantageous. And one of those ways, this past session, we only had about 3 weeks between bill introduction and the end of session. One of the ways it was not advantageous, we did not have enough time to corral what I'll call, A-listers who are in support of this and get them to Albany and help lobby on behalf of this effort. Many of them had their own tours that they were on in May and June, and they're just generally busy and booked as celebrities, 2-3 weeks out on the calendar. This time around, with a longer runway, I'm pretty confident we're going to get some big names in Albany lending their support in person in the halls of the Capitol. And something like that makes a difference with colleagues because, look, we have attention spans like any other human beings. There are 1,000 things going on at any given time in the legislature. And, if you've got some big celebrity who you or your kids or your family members, love and it's your favorite artist or one of their favorite artists, and they're coming and saying, hey, look, pay attention to this bill, that matters. So we're going to be trying to leverage, every tool that we can, every person that we can who cares about this to bring the attention that's needed to get something like this across the finish line.
For more than 100 years, the New York State Association of Counties has served as the united voice of New York's county leaders, fostering excellence in county government and advocating for sustainable funding and sensible legislation that protects local taxpayers and the essential services they rely on. Learn more at nysac.org. Have you thought about where that finish line is in terms of timing of the session? Because the law doesn't expire till the summer of 2026, and historically the legislature doesn't work until it has a deadline. So are you plotting everything for May and June, or is there a case to be made for let's do this first thing when we get back in January? Don't give people a chance to rally opposition. Or maybe let's do it in March or April when we've got some dead days in the legislature as we're waiting for some sort of message from on high on budget negotiations, and we've got time to kill, like we saw with the medical aid and dying vote. Is there a time for pushing this that makes the most sense?
Well, to the extent that we have a strategy, I'm certainly not going to broadcast it to potential opponents on your show.
Fair.
All due respect.
Fair.
But
That's
what
fair.
I will tell you
I didn't think
is
of that.
just in terms of mile markers here, the next step before session is there is some refining that we have to do with the bill. I've heard possibly the Assembly is going to be convening either a roundtable or a meeting of some kind to hear more from stakeholders in a sort of semi-formal way. And certainly, I will even concede that there are a few tweaks that need to be made to the bill to clean up, some provisions that weren't quite crafted, I would argue, perfectly or satisfactorily. And so we're going to be doing that between now and January. Beyond that, stay tuned. But certainly, we're putting together that strategy that you're mindful of, clearly.
Well, in terms of the policy, some of the headlines from the omnibus bill that was being kicked around in May were a cap on service charges on tickets, I think 25% of the price of a ticket, updating the refund policies for delayed events, allowing musicians to ban tickets from their shows from being sold at a profit on the secondary market. Are those three provisions still key to you moving forward? Or if anything needs to fall off the table, is that reselling one going to be the first one to go?
Those are three of the priorities. There are likely one or two others of the, 8 to 10 that are included in the bill. Those are core priorities, yes. The provision, the proposal that elicited, you probably remember, the most controversy and opposition from a segment of the ecosystem here was the restrictions on reselling tickets for profit. Now, I'll sort of remind you and more importantly your listeners, because you probably do remember, that
shucks.
this is at artist opt-in. And so it's not every concert. It's not even applicable. Although I think it's a fair conversation to have as to whether it should be more broadly applicable to sporting events, etc. But this is just for concerts when an artist opts in. Because I'll tell you that I've spoken with artist groups and artists, and not all of them, but many of them are sick and tired of seeing their concert halls filled almost exclusively by rich people. Because that is what is happening at these hot shows, is you have so many thousands of tickets that are being gobbled up on the primary marketplace when the ticket is initially sold, and they're being picked up for the exclusive purpose of spinning them around to the secondary resale marketplace, marking them up, making a lot of money, and the only people who can afford those 2, 3, 4, 5 times marked up tickets are people with deep pockets. That's not how entertainment should be working in New York. There should be access, greater access, to what I'll call average fans, and right now there's not. That's why the artists care about this, and that's why they want this artist opt-in.
So the reason that there are these stakeholders, I'll call them that charitably, who are interested and can profit off the current system is because they're able to buy tickets first, because they have some legal, some not so legal ways of gobbling up tickets. And in terms of the landscape as it exists right now, do you feel like regulators in this space are doing enough to potentially just deter those bad actors? I know there was a case recently announced about somebody who had spent millions of dollars to secure tickets so that they could sell them for millions of dollars in profits, but that's just one player in a space that clearly has a lot of actors trying to do this. So is there enough being done regulatorily right now at the state or federal level?
The short answer is no. Mm-hmm. And at the state level, the immediate regulators are the Department of State here in New York, and certainly you've got separate federal regulators as well. And one of the tools that is commonly used is referred to as bots. These are sort of automated software tools that do gobble up these tickets. Ticketmaster and other primary marketplace platforms, they do have their own sort of anti-bot tools that are in place. They catch some of it. They don't catch all of it. The problem is, and this was in my original bill, it did not make it into the negotiated bill, but it's something that I think is worth revisiting as we fine-tune leading into next session, is to basically require that Ticketmaster and others, when they catch this activity, to send it to prosecutors. Right now they don't. And when questioned about why they don't, it'd be too much of a hassle. We don't want to be, spending hours and resources interfacing with attorneys general.
They don't care who's buying their tickets, right? As long as someone's buying the tickets, they're happy.
And that's probably part of the rationale on their end, quite frankly, because you're right. Now, they probably have to have some system in place that, to save face, if nothing else, whereby they can go out and tell people like me, hey, we're catching these folks and, we're taking care of it ourselves. But the original bill that I put together would have mandated they send, IP addresses and any other information they collect to prosecutors so they can do something about it. Right now, the AG can prosecute. There are state laws. There are also federal laws that prohibit this activity. There are criminal laws that prohibit this activity. But they can't prosecute if they don't know when it's happening, by whom it's happening, and that requires information sharing. And right now, Ticketmaster's not doing it.
I typically think of this as an issue solely in the domain of the legislature, but clearly the governor plays a role in policy, and she's been on the whole affordability pipe train for a little more than a year now. So is that a potential ally that could be tapped in a more meaningful way? Say, getting this as part of the state of the state, getting it as part of the budget conversations, and say, hey, Governor, you want to champion a consumer-friendly issue? Here's one that's tailor-made for you. I've got everything lined up and ready to go, and we can be good friends in the future. James Skoufis, and Governor Kathy Hochul.
Once and future friends. Look, if she wanted to take my bill and put it into the executive budget, I welcome that.
But would you pitch it to her? Would you tell her, take this on? This is a win. You want to be big in Orange County?
Let's do it right now.
Yeah.
Let's do it right now. I'm sure she is an avid listener to your show. At a minimum, I'm sure someone on her staff is an avid listener to your show.
It would help if you said something incendiary about the governor right now that I could promote on social. Then I know they'll listen. So would you like to say anything insane right now?
We're not going to do that. Okay. We're going to keep it strictly positive here. Okay. And sure, consider this the pitch. Take my bill, put it in your executive budget proposal. This is, and look, in all seriousness, and I've said this to colleagues before, is getting this right, fixing these problems we're talking about, world changing? No. But is it as important as making sure housing is affordable, making sure that higher education is accessible? Maybe for you, but I would not go out and tell my constituents this is in the same level of importance. However, I don't think it is right or fair that we just try and fix those problems that allow people to barely scrape by and barely afford to live in New York State. I think that we should be doing what we can to promote a better quality of life in New York State. And the fact that millions of New Yorkers can't even go out and afford to see a ball game or see an artist perform a concert in New York because of how rigged the system is, that is something we should address, even if it's not in that sort of same level of, sort of basic necessities that I mentioned before. This is a core key, in my opinion, quality of life issue.
You might disagree with me, but my assumption is that if the version of the bill that you had primed and ready to go in May got to the floor, it would have passed overwhelmingly. I think you would have even gotten some Republicans to jump on board, which suggests to me that your issue isn't necessarily with an individual member or the members itself, but it's central staff that's holding this up. Is that the case? Is your biggest obstacle in Albany the concerns of the 64th senator and the 151st assembly member, the central staff, or is it about actually getting more lawmakers on board?
Yeah, so I can't speak as well to the assembly side. There could well be more of a staff issue there. I don't know. Mm-hmm. There is not a staff issue on the Senate side. And you're right. The overwhelming majority of both the majority conference, the Democratic conference, as well as, I think, if brought to the floor, the Republican conference supports this bill. The majority strongly supports this bill. There are a couple of key members who have some reservations. I don't know that that's the reason why the bill didn't come to the floor. I think, again, this is not necessarily a three-way conversation because the governor was not engaged on this at that point, but it is a two-way conversation. It's not just a Senate bill. And, we didn't quite get everyone who needs to be comfortable with moving the bill to the floor. Now, I think part of it, unfortunately and disingenuously, was, you had these oppositional groups, and we're talking the scalpers and the websites on which the scalpers sell their tickets, the secondary platforms, the StubHubs, the SeatGeeks of the world. They descended on the Capitol those last 3 weeks and were trying to strike fear into everyone that they could talk to. Despite that, there was still overwhelming support. But I think that some core key legislators did sort of come to sort of the outcome in their mind. Well, let's just figure this out next year. There's a lot of noise. My cell phone is blowing up every day by these lobbyists. We're already dealing with, 19 other things that we have to get done this year. Let's do a 1-year extender, spend off session figuring this out, and then do the thing in 2026. It was not a central staff problem in the Senate, to answer your question.
Well, finally, you mentioned the idea of bringing A-list talent to Albany to help move this item along. And we recently had a draft where we discussed who are the celebrities who you would choose to move an issue. And I picked Jay-Z, Dan Clark picked Kendrick Lamar, Raga Justin, for some reason, picked Joan Baez. I think she had just seen A Complete Unknown. Who is the artist or artists that you think would actually appeal to the current makeup of the legislature? You've been there for, 12, 14 years now. You know these people. Who would get these people excited? Are they older artists? Are they current people? Where should we be thinking in terms of getting these people hyped?
I need to figure out who Speaker Hastie and Majority Leader Stewart Cousins' favorite artists are. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the answer.
Okay. Hey, listener, this is Dave chiming in after the fact. Clearly, I missed an opportunity to make a joke about the Speaker's love of the late artist Prince. I apologize for that oversight, and I hope you won't judge me too harshly. So it's not like getting K-pop groups here because Ron Kim's daughters are big K-pop fans.
Yeah, Ron Kim's good.
We got
Ron
the
Kim's
assembly.
Good. We don't got to convince
counterpoint
Ron
Kim. This. Good to know. Well, we've been speaking with State Senator James Skoufis. He is a Hudson Valley Democrat. Senator, thank you so much for making the time, and good luck in 2026 for at least my pocketbook.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me.